Hello and welcome to the part 2 of building the application. In this part of the video, we are going to be adding widget labels to our application window. Thinking-Tower widgets basically provides various types of controls that you can use in your application. For example, buttons, labels, text boxes, and so on. The label widget we are going to add in this video is going to be used to provide a single line caption. So it's basically going to provide a labeling for that particular widget in the window. By default, when widgets are created, they are positioned in the center, and they do that by using sticky arguments. There's usually 4 types of sticky arguments: north, south, east, and west. So you can change the default position by specifying whatever value you want for the sticky argument. What I'm going to do is add a line of code at a time and then explain what that line of code does. So I'm just going to press enter to tab down and then add the first label widget. So on line 8 here, I've added my first label widget. You can see here it's got the text label, and then in between the parentheses here, we have the window. This window basically is referring to this window variable on line number 5. So do a comma, and within the label widget, you can add different properties. So here I'm adding a font property. So I'm specifying the type of font I want to be used on the label. So the value for the font is Helvetica, and I've also set the size of the font, and I've also set a bold property because I want the text for that font to appear bold. So notice the quotes around the values, very important. And then a comma, and then I'm also adding a background color to the label widget. I'm giving it a background color of yellow, which is the same as the background color I have given the application window on line number 7. I just want the colors to blend in. And then do a comma. Notice after each of the properties here, put a comma to separate them. And then the next property here is text. This is the text that will be displayed for the label in the application window. And the value here is amount to convert. That's what will appear on the label. Another thing I'm doing here is I want the labels to appear in a table format. And we do that by using the grid method. So here I'm doing a dot grid, and inside the grid here you specify rows and columns. So I'm specifying that this label here, I want it to appear on row number 1, which is the first row within that grid, and I also want it to appear on column number 1 within that grid. I've also used the sticky argument to set the position of that label to west. All right, so that is my first label. My second label on line number 9 is basically identical to the first label on line number 8. The only key difference is here I've changed the text for the label. That text says, the first label says amount to convert, and the label for the second one says conversion rate. That's the only thing that has changed. So everything else is the same between both labels. I've added a third label on line number 10. Again, it's identical to the other 2 labels. The only key difference is the name of the label. I've called this one converted amount. And also notice that the position on the grid is different. The first label appears on row number 1 on the grid. The second label appears on row number 2 on the grid. And the third label appears on row number 3 on the grid. They all have similar column on the grid, and I've set the sticky, which is the positioning argument, to west. So that's it for this part of the video. We'll continue building the application in part number 3. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.